The Mummy on the Orient Express was mentioned in a Matt Smith episode a while ago, but I'm surprised that they kept their word on making an entire episode about it. I was rather pleasantly surprised to say the least with this episode, thinking that the show could only go downhill after watching Listen. I shan't bore you all with an introductory rant because I've got nothing to talk about that's bugging me right now, so let's just enjoy this moment with 10 seconds of beautiful sounds. After last week's episode set a new standard of how to not write a Doctor Who episode, it was nice to see the start of the episode perked my curiosity, rather than make me question whether or not I would be considering suicide after watching. The non-naturalistic feel of the episode is given out within the first 2 minutes of the episode. Take for example the ticker in the bottom corner of the screen. None of the characters in the episode can see it, but we can. What's excellent about this is that we can instantly detect inevitability in who is going to die, building tension whenever the little timer appears, regardless of whether we can see the mummy or not. Watching this for the second time, I find it ironic that the old lady asks about the mummy being a form of fancy dress, considering that we assume we are on an old railway set perhaps in the early 20th century. Yet we are in the future, and the passengers are all stubbornly wearing classical costumes. They are the ones in the fancy dress to the viewers in the 21st century. The old woman dies after her vision with the mummy and the timer disappears. The camera pulls out and we have this beautifully interesting shot of the train flying through space. My only issue here is that the train has no reason to be twisting and turning. It looks good on an aesthetic level, but if the train is going to a destination via space travel, it wouldn't be twisting and turning the way it does. It would just delay the journey, unless the whole point is to make the journey longer, but this is sadly never explained. Nonetheless, this is a positive start. Jamie Mathieson, however you say your name, you have my full and undivided attention. The TARDIS materialises on the ship and Clara is in the episode. Why? Anyway, the Doctor introduces the train in his wonderful Scottish accent to Clara, and for some reason, the singer at the back of the carriage is singing a bluesy, mellow version of Queen's Don't Stop Me Now. And I don't really know why this song was chosen, but then again, It Had to Be You and The Empty Child was specifically written for that episode in 2005. It had to be you. Whereas it seems that the Doctor is implying Queen will be around forever and ever. It's worse though, because the singer isn't trying to seduce anybody, like the entertaining singers of the time would be doing. The Doctor claims it's meant to be recreational, but it just seems like the train's aesthetic design and the people's costumes or clothes are the only things that have been recreated from the past. The pair imply that this is their last trip, even though it blatantly isn't, and Clara rambles on about how she made a mistake for hating on the Doctor. The Doctor starts talking about a plant of obsidian, and I want to know what he's talking about, there and then. But no, Clara has to have her say, because let's not forget, the show's title-named character is not the main character anymore. I think this is the fault of having too many writers on one show writing their own stories that wouldn't fit into chronological order of the series. What I'm trying to say is it'd be nice if the writers made their mind up about whether this show's storyline is continuous or whether this is just another TV show you can turn on any episode you feel like, when you feel like, and you won't have to know what happened last week in order to know what's happening this week. So the crazy woman from earlier comes along and can't quite get the idea of time travel through her head, despite we're in the future. Never mind, I'm sure she'll become more important later in the episode. Clara, and that guy she uses for time travel when she gets bored of her boyfriend, are introduced to the captain of the ship, as well as the problem the ship is facing. The Doctor's cynical joke about old ladies is very much appreciated by my dark sense of humour, and the episode keeps teasing us about Clara's departure. But no, we must once again be reminded that Clara and her boyfriend are practically inseparable, with a pointless phone call. The Doctor goes on an investigation in his amusing little way that I hope we see more of in the future. He then finds my favourite character of the entire episode, because he's certainly sinister thanks to the lighting and his creepy performance, along with the slow tracking camera movements. It's a shame we don't see more of this as the episode progresses. The Doctor goes around the ship asking people about what they know about the Foretold. He offers the first man a jelly baby, which is a nice and subtle callback to the old Doctor Who series, just as the second victim on the train is selected. The enemy has now been made twice as interesting but half as scary at the same time. It's great that the monster will transport and kill you wherever you go, but the music doesn't fit the atmosphere of the episode. People are being killed off here, and the music sounds like the score of a Hollywood adventure film. If it was a bit more intense, I'd feel a bit more engaged in the story and caring for the characters. The Doctor has a rather interesting chat with the captain of the ship, and then meets Perkins again, who seems to be really up to scratch for being the Doctor's companion. See, what interests me the most about Perkins is he gives off an impression like that of Dr. Watson in Sherlock Holmes, an assistant as opposed to somebody who's just there to moan and look pretty. In my mind, it's settling to know that the Doctor is already looking for a replacement for Clara, in that he could have asked Clara for the manifest and previous locations the train had been to, but he knew too well that she'd go off and have some pointless emotional conversations with the granddaughter of the recently deceased. The Doctor comes along only to find that Clara is stuck inside a room with the sarcophagus, which could have been easily avoided had she just thought, I'm not going to be an idiot and follow her. If I'm looking for the Doctor, I could easily come back later when I've searched the rest of the ship. The mummy activates and the Doctor gets arrested, just in time for the third victim to die. The Doctor figures out why everyone's been specifically selected for the trip, and Sherlock gets his first reward for working out the answer. The next clue. Maybe Stanley Kubrick can help us out this time. What's he even doing there? But before we can get a sequel to The Shining, the next target is picked. This part of the scene is just superb to watch, as we start to see the true nature of the Doctor that we needed to see for a while. He needs to solve the mystery, and he won't care how he goes about doing it, even if people's lives are lost at the expense of his research. However heartless this may sound, I'm perfectly content with the way this attitude could play out. However, it is ignored and focused on other things like this.
It's like you kicked a big hole in the side of my life.
And this. And this. At the end of it, the man prays of superstition to save his little life, which is quite a human thing to do really, despite the lunacy that must take over your mind when your life is about to be taken away from you for no apparent reason. It's almost like they're having a crack at religion here, but I'll leave that to people on the internet to debate over, or just tell me what you think in the comments. One thing that annoyed me, however, about this part is why the Doctor decides to move out of the way for the mummy to get through, despite he can't see or hear the mummy whatsoever. The scientists get to work on studying all the people who died, and the computer Gus decides that it's a good idea to blow out all the cooking staff into space to make sure we get as little Clara screen time as possible. I think I like your thinking, Gus, but you can't just go killing people just because you want the Doctor to get back to work, you cheeky bastard. They figure out that the victims have psychological conditions, and it starts to become rather obvious that the captain is going to be next. The next sequence gets really interesting because the performances from the actors get very intense, and we see a man fueled by rage because of confusion this time, as opposed to fear.
That comes later.
The rather creepy shot of the mummy's hand going through the Doctor's face is really quite good for the shock factor, but we had already established that he could move where he wanted, so it wouldn't matter if he walked through him or not. After he dies, there is a really awesome conversation between Perkins and the Doctor, where in which even Perkins starts to doubt the Doctor's integrity because of his lack of humanity. The Doctor is of course right, we know, but it still makes for interesting drama nonetheless. However, that dies as soon as Clara comes back on the scene, and I don't really get Clara at all anymore. Yes, it's her last trip. Yes, she could have just said goodbye, but I would love to know who supports her claim that it's a pretty shit thing that we can't just travel around the universe safely and do a bit of sightseeing. God almighty, imagine if Doctor Who was like that. It would be bloody boring. Do you know why a lot of people think the scenes in 2001 A Space Odyssey with Hal are the best scenes? Because there's tension and danger. There's a threat. If she is holding that philosophy, why is she still here? I'm sure there are hundreds of other actors and actresses that would play hundreds of other characters who aren't as boring as you, Clara. Oh, you are the bane of my existence. Right, enough of that. This episode is a lot better than some of the others we've witnessed so far in this series, so I'm going to try and appreciate its subtleties. Okay, I'm really going to try.
I'm so pleased to finally see you. I'm the Doctor and I will be your victim this evening. Are you my mummy?
Oh, you're so cheeky. I love it. Very nice callback indeed right there. How he managed to get the psychological effects of Mrs. Lady into his own brain though, I don't know, but that quote was pretty redeeming in all honesty. Anyway, it seems pretty silly that the way to stop the mummy was a key word or phrase like the legend said. I didn't want the way to stop the mummy to be that a superstition is true, because they aren't true. That's what makes them superstitious. Oh wait, not before we have our budget cut for no apparent reason. All the events the Doctor claims to have happened, like dropping off the passengers, arriving on the beach, it's like there were scenes written for them, but were just cut. Why? In fact, I think it would have been easier for the CGI team for Gus not to have tried to kill all the people at the end. The train could have just flown off into the distance and the TARDIS would disappear, dropping Clara off home. The end. Boom. Done. So Clara and the Doctor have another pointless chat and Perkins has a quick peek at the Doctor's TARDIS. I think it is a total shame that Perkins didn't want to stay. He was lovely and would have made an excellent replacement for Clara. What annoys me more is the episode could have just ended there with Perkins leaving and boom, we have the next time trailer. We gotta have some sexual innuendos from Clara to finish off the episode.
He's fine with it.
Sorry.
Danny, he's fine with the idea of me and you knocking about. It's his idea that we stop. He's decided he doesn't mind and neither do I. Oh, to hell with the last hurrah, let's keep going. Yeah, they happen.
Seriously?
Look, as long as you get me home safe and on time, everything is great. I am so sorry. I've had a wobble. It's a big wobble, but it's fine. Forget about it now. Shut up and give me some planets.
Because you know that one that's made entirely of shrubs. Are you sure about this?
Are you? Have you ever been sure? Then what are you waiting for?
You've got some creativity, Mr. Mathewson. I'll give you that. I give this episode an 8 out of 10 because this episode was very, very interesting. The lack of Clara made way for more positive things to say. All I can say is that the whole thing could have been better. If she wasn't there in the first place, then the ending could have been a whole lot better.